Okay, cool. Oh, I have a timer, so I don't even need this weird contraption that I'm doing here. So like, no, that's going to distract me and give me wrong data. Bugger off. All right, cool. How's everyone doing? Has been smashing so far, right? Let's give a round of applause to the organizers and the other speakers because they have been doing a great job so far. Excellent. So I'm here to talk about semantic searchable web apps in Angular. So basically, while that sounds very fancy, what I'm trying to tell you about is how to make Googlebot and Google Search with that and Angular great friends. So, of course, the clicker doesn't work because that would be easy. You know what, I have a second clicker. I'm going to try another clicker. Because, you know, yeah, you have one as well, so we have 3 clickers. So let's see. Any bets how many clickers we have to try until it actually does the thing? My bet is 3, because, you know, why not? So...
You can't blame it on the conference, though.
I don't blame it on the conference. This is my equipment not working. All right, cool. So my name is Martin Splitt, as I have been introduced. As I have been fiddling while I was introduced here, I have not listened to you. I'm very sorry. Real quick, I'm a webmaster trends analyst at Google in Zurich, Switzerland. So I did not swim here, but I flew here for a while. I'm on Twitter at Geekonaut. And a lot of people ask me, like, so what exactly is a webmaster trends analyst? And I say, okay, look, forget about that. Think of it as a very fancy term for a developer advocate, which then usually leads to a lot of people outside of this conference circus saying, what is a developer advocate? And I'm like, actually, it's a developer avocado. So, oh no, oh really? Oh no, okay, that's annoying. So now comes the disclaimer part, because you know, I just want to make something really clear, and I'm going to read it out real quick for you. I'm not part of the Angular team, and I haven't done that much Angular development in quite a while, so please be gentle to me. Most of the tips here work across frameworks, and even with vanilla JavaScript. Also, no animals were harmed in making this talk. This talk might contain, I'm not sure about this, traces of nuts, which is probably me. And then please consult your fellow developers and the friendly people in this community and the organizers in case you have seen any adverse effects. With that out of the way, let's walk through what we're going to do today. So first things first, I want to introduce the Googlebot to you, which is a really nice, friendly fellow. And then we're going to talk about how we are like working in terms of search, how we are discovering things. Then we're going to look into Angular Universal as a way to, you know, get some benefits and nice things, because this is an Angular conference after all. And last but not least, I want to give you 5 very simple tips to make your web apps better in general, and those are relatively framework agnostic. Number 3 is going to shock you. So this little fellow here is Googlebot. Hi Googlebot, how are you doing? Cool. So what is Googlebot doing? Well, Googlebot is basically a little program that browses the internet the entire day, and that's a job that I would definitely take if I would be offered one, but hey, unfortunately I'm not. So Googlebot crawls the internet using what we would use as well, a browser. It doesn't use the latest Chrome though. It uses a very, very modified version of Chrome 41. So if you are aware of Chrome versions, then you might know that we are a little further ahead than 41 at this point in time. So make sure that your stuff works with Googlebot. And so Googlebot's first task is crawling. So we tell Googlebot, hey, here's a bunch of websites that you should have a look at. It then goes, fetches the websites, extracts the content that it sees, and then as a second step, it looks at what this content is, and what is there, what is the topic, is there any links, is there any stuff that I should be aware of, is this something that people might look for, right? Because what we want to do is we want to serve you relevant content. So if I'm typing in best Angular conference ever, then I probably want to find maybe this conference, rather than, let's say, a conference about flying autonomous vehicles. Even though that would be cool, that's not relevant for me. So for this, we have to understand the content of the website as well. And we call this indexing. Let's have a look at how that looks in practice. So we have this kind of thing. We give our bot a bunch of URLs to start from, and then it downloads these pages or opens these pages in its browser. And then it has a look at the content and basically figures out, this page is about cats, this page is about dogs, this page links to this other page, and so on and so forth, and finds out using a lot of signals what is a good page for a certain search query. So we are trying to figure out what is good stuff that people might be looking for, and then we find other links, and these links go back to the first stage, and we are starting a crawl again, and then this goes in a cycle forever. And if you would be starting a website, let's say 10 years ago, you would probably build your website like this. Let's say we want to build a dog rating platform. So we want to give this a title, we give this a bunch of texts, a bunch of images, and a bunch of links. And when we come to indexing, this is really nice, because we are crawling this, and then we are like, okay, so this is a page that rates doggos, which is cool, and because doggos are the best anyway. It's the biggest rating platform. We are not sure about that, but it's a dog rating platform. Okay, we got that point. And it also rates puppers. Oh, that's nice. I mean, puppers are cute and stuff. And it has the latest doggo, which is super cool. And the latest doggo is apparently called Leica, and there's more doggos and more puppers on here. So if I would now type in, I want to rate a doggo, then that would be a good result probably, right? Because the content looks like it might be interesting. Or if I'm looking for latest doggo ratings, then I'm actually also very well served here. And also we see, so there's an image of a dog called Leica. And there's a link to probably a page that describes this dog in more detail. So if I'm searching for doggo Leica rating, this page might actually be what I want to go for. Or if there's other doggos and puppers, then I can go to these other links and I see a new document that describes to me what more doggos are there. Probably also in the same format, so there's like a page for each doggo and each pupper, and might have an image, might have some descriptive text, and will have a rating probably. Okay, cool. So we can infer that ratedoggos.com, which is totally not taken yet, so make your money here. You heard it here first. And I want to take a little share, if I may, just saying. So this is a doggos and puppers rating page, which is amazing, and it has these bunch of sub-resources. So we now can crawl dogs/Leica, doggos, and puppers for more content, and then decide how good they are if someone is searching for doggo ratings or pupper ratings, which is great. However, these days we build websites slightly differently. So you might do ng new, my app, in this case like doggos-rating or something. And then you might run an ng serve so that you can see your site, and then you start like developing, and you keep developing until you're happy with what you've got. And then you create a build package from it, so you make it distributable, you put that on your server, and you're really happy because users are seeing a doggo rating page and they're really happy. This dog is called Epona. She's obviously a good dog, good girl, 10 of 10. I can second this opinion. Great, so we're done here, right? Well, if we look at what we've got, then we see this markup. And the only thing that is close to content here is this. This doesn't tell us much. I mean, what is this page about? If you just see the left-hand side, you're not exactly sure what this page is about, right? So that makes us a little worried. So we're like, oh no, this isn't great. But we don't want you to have more work. We want you to build cool things, and we have to pick them up. So we have to do something. This isn't perfect, right? So let's do something about it. So we introduced this third step, which is called rendering. So now, outside of just crawling your page, downloading the markup, and extracting the content, and then crawling again, we have to render as well. But rendering is a pretty large and convoluted term. So rendering usually is something, either the entire chain here or parts of these chains. So we have some templates, and it doesn't matter if you're using client-side templates or server-side templates for this. Let's say you have a PHP web app or you use WordPress or something. Then you have a template on your server and some data from your database, and that generates markup on the server side that is then sent to the client. If you're using Angular, you're probably having some templates. You're having some data from an API that comes in, and you're producing the markup on the client side. So this can happen on the server or client side. Then the markup is processed by the server into a structure that is called the DOM, as you well know. And this DOM then is taken from the browser to be rendered into pixels. So that's the thing that you actually see. To be honest, we don't really care that much about the DOM and the pixels. The only thing that we care about is getting this markup done, getting the content together. How it's looking is not that important to us. It just has to be readable for our Googlebot friend, right? So this is what I talk about when I say rendering. I do not mean the rest of the chain. I only mean the process of generating markup. So now what we would like to do is, it's a relatively straightforward process. We still crawl, but then we render the page as a normal user's browser would do, and then we take the rendered version and index it, and then we discover the links and the images and the content and everything that's great about your web app, and then we just start crawling the things that we discovered, and then we just keep the cycle going. So this is really cool, because my talk's done here. We are done. I'm not sure. Oh, wow, this was really quick. I'm really sorry. I thought it would take me longer. So yeah, thank you very much for your... Oh, no. Wait. There's one little caveat. There is a problem. What was it? The internet is freaking gigantic. And that's the problem. We see 160 or over 160 trillion documents on the web daily. So we have to do a lot. Like Googlebot is really busy and does not go home and does not swim home from work like I do. So Googlebot has to deal with all these things. And as it turns out, surprisingly, computing resources, even in the cloud age, are pretty tricky to get by. Like this takes a lot of time, especially if your pages are really large and we have to render a lot of images and stuff, or we have to process a lot of JavaScript, megabytes and megabytes of JavaScript. That's a tricky one, which is we're really happy to see that people are trying to slim this down. So what we do instead is, as we can't do this, we have to make a trade-off. So there's a lot of websites that are using server-side rendering or are just like classic HTML pages. 30-something% of the internet is run today is run on WordPress. WordPress, hopefully, mostly, gives us static HTML that we can index like this because we don't have to render it first. We can just index it like this. So should we make these indexings or make these pages indexed slower, only so that we can have more resources for the JavaScript pages? Or should we just not do the JavaScript pages? That's not good either. So what we want to do is we want to balance something. So the balance we are striking here is we are having a first round of indexing, which is based on the markup that we are getting from you. And that's the classical cycle that we've got from the very get-go, basically. But then as our computing resources become available, we are rendering what we see on your page, and then we index again. So you get multiple runs of indexing to get your content into search. That's the only way that we can do it right now. We're working on improving this, but that might take a little while. So what we can do, though, if you want to get into this fast cycle, is we can create our markup on the server side, and that's called server-side rendering. You could hypothetically even do something more, sneaky-beaky. You could technically also do what we call dynamic rendering. So you could see, is this an actual user? Because we are telling you if this browser is an actual browser that is coming to your page, or if it's Googlebot. If you see Googlebot, you are free to give us a server-side rendered simplified version while you're serving the users the real deal. Alternatively, you can just serve everyone fast markup because it's nice and fast and usually less data over the wire. But basically, we want to have a look at server-side rendering. And server-side rendering, unfortunately, in many frameworks is a little tricky. Probably also in certain cases in Angular, it might not be super easy. But I want to just quickly run you through what Angular Universal does. Who here has used Angular Universal beforehand? That's not very few people. Who here has heard about it beforehand? OK, that's better. So did you know that there's something really cool now that's called an NG engine for Express? So now what you can do is, within your Angular project that you've got today, ready, waiting on the disk to be served to someone, you can just run generate universal, give it a client project name, which is the name of the application that you're building when you're building something, and then install, if you're using Express, that is, on Node.js. So your server infrastructure has to be Express for this to work. But then you can just use the ng universal Express engine and install some, Express and webpack and TS loader to compile your server from TypeScript to JavaScript, for instance. And then what you do is in your server-side code, so this is Node.js, this is the server side, you have an Express application, which is not too hard to build. And then you say OK, we want to run this in production mode, and please set the view engine that renders the HTML to the ng Express engine. This is the key part here. And bootstrap the app server module ng factory. You do not change your actual Angular code, you can just change your server code to include this. And then you serve just as you would, render your index page, and you'll be fine. And then also serve all these static assets. And then what you do, you build prod as you did before. And additionally to that, you should compile your server. If you don't use TypeScript for your server side, that's fine, then this step is just not there. So you run your server with a third command, and that is what it takes. That's it. That's the entire story. And what you get there is you get this. So this is the same app as before. It's the doggos-rating app again. But this time, there's an H1 that tells us this is rate doggos. And then there's an H2 that tells us this page is about doggos. And then we have the doggos, Epona, and then we have Epona as a doggo image somewhere in the thing. And the rating is 10 of 10 because she's a good girl. That's pretty cool. And this can be indexed in the first run. So that's nice. Also, this renders really, really quickly, even on really old low-end devices, which is something that you want to have a look at if you care about the next billion users who are not coming from places like Europe or Tel Aviv or the US, at least in the places in the US where you have fast internet. Because I have really fast internet available to me on a daily basis. That's great. But a lot of people pay a lot of money for internet access. And they don't have that much data that they can pull through, and they don't have that much time as well. So yeah, this makes our Googlebot pretty happy and gives users a great experience. So this works for us as a kind of like balancing act here, because we are not making you do too much work, probably, hopefully, and still your users are getting a benefit. So we are not like selfishless or selfishly saying, oh, you have to, do something for us in search. But we are working on improving the entire thing for you anyways. And now, I like to close up with 5 tips that you can use and should have a look at if you're building Angular apps, if you're building React apps, Vue apps, whatever, or just vanilla HTML apps even. So let's start with the first thing, good URLs. URLs are basically your public API. They should be reliable and user-friendly. And you should not just like make random changes to your URLs or make people be confused if they go to a certain URL that it's not the content they would expect from the URL. So, first things first, the first tip is actually not search relevant. That's just like for users and people consuming your website. Instead of having something like this, which does not make clear what, let's say like this is rate doggos. Why is there a cat ID? I don't want cats in my doggo ranking page. So instead, what you could do is you could just go like, yeah, this is actually the categories, and this is the dogs category of my page. Much nicer. Search does not care that much about it. We don't actually look at this kind of stuff. The other URL works just as well for search, but for your users, the second URL works a lot better. Then also, do not use the hash routing. I know that has existed, but it's basically a hack. It has always been a hack, and it should not be used anymore. There's the JavaScript history API that works so much better. So please make use of the JavaScript history API to give us URLs that make a little more sense, look more sensible as well, and also search picks them up much, much better. So do not use the other one. It causes a bunch of interesting issues and problems. Not necessarily. So first things first, yes, you need to have some server that supports this properly. I know that there has been issues with things like GitHub pages and S3, but everything else pretty much allows you to configure the server to handle these URLs properly. Yes, it has to be taken care of, but I mean, you wouldn't leave a type error somewhere, or like a syntax error somewhere in, so why would you do bad URLs? That's the whole point of this tip, have good URLs that make sense. And that might need some server configuration. Also, do not just like remove URLs, use redirects. Redirects have a good reason to exist. And I'm going to tell you about redirects. Actually, I'm going to go back one more time because people are taking pictures. Okay, good, cool. So redirect. Let's say you have a page that moves from somewhere to somewhere else. Maybe you don't have the categories anymore. Maybe now it's just like /doggos. That's cool, that's fine. But your users are having bookmarks that then stop working. And they might use like third-party apps like Pocket or other things that might bookmark these pages and then run into nothing as well. That's not a good user experience. And even worse, search remembers how many people, found this thing useful by clicking on it and not coming back to search. So we are basically collecting a lot of data about how useful your page is and how great it is. And if you just like delete it and make it appear somewhere else, then we're like, oh, this page is no longer here. We're just going to remove it from our index. We're not going to show this to users because they click on it and they get a 404. That's not really good. So we give you this other page. Okay, cool, but this is new. I have never seen this before. What is this? What hell? But if you use a redirect, we're like, so this page is no longer good. This other page is what it is right now. So we can deduct from this fact that everything we know about the previous page has just moved to this other location. So all your search signals are moving with it. So we remember that your page was particularly useful for a bunch of users, for instance, if you use a redirect. You can use redirects either on the server side, or you can even do document.location.href something something. We detect those as well. So don't worry about that one too much. You could hypothetically also use meta redirects, but the other thing is if you delete a page, if you really, really remove some content for whatever reason, maybe a user-generated content was removed, someone does not want their dog to be rated anymore, then please tell us not to index it anymore if you have a fancy night like this. If you delete it like this, please tell us that you did, and we'll happily take the hint with a no index. But what we have seen, unfortunately, is that some people might go, oh, this is a 404 page, and this is like we are using Angular here or any other framework, so we're going to put a meta tag no index already in, and then we see what's going to happen. Right? That's fine. That's cool. That's all right. No, it's not, because in the initial indexing phase, we're like, oh, this is a 404. We don't want to index it. Oh, sorry, we're out. If you then use JavaScript to dynamically change that, to remove that tag, we're having a problem because we have already registered, oh, this is a 404 page, we should not put them in the index, fine. And then you want us to come back later and check again, does not quite work. So be careful with these 404s. Another thing, please use meaningful markup. So you might be tempted to do something like this, or even use a span or a button or whatever, who knows, marquee or what do I know, and have an on-click handler on it to make a link happen. Please do not, okay? There is a reason there are href attributes, and it's so much easier for us to discover these in the very first run, and it works much, much better with assistive technology as well. So please do use real, actual links in your HTML. That makes our life a lot easier. Also, there's a few things that you should not forget. So we have the title tag that helps us figure out what your page is about and show it nicely in the search results. We have the meta description, which is what we might pick. We might pick a part of this as a little excerpt below your title. So in the search results, you can describe what this page is about, which might convey to a user that they should really click on it. So this is nice. And if you have multiple URLs that go to the same page, maybe there's like a doggos/top or something that also goes to Leica. Tell us which one is the one that you really think is the one that matters, the URL that makes sense, and that's the canonical URL. So these three things help us figure out what your content is about much easier. So that's a very, very important part. Also, the title should be relevant to the page, not like rate doggos on every page does not really help. But if someone searches for Leica and sees rate doggos-Leica, they're like, this is a rating for Leica. I click on that. So it's even nicer. HTTP statuses are a thing that matters. So let's say you go to lol_would_know on the doggo-rating page, which obviously does not exist, and the user sees this and it goes, oh, okay, this is not useful. I'll go back. I'll be having a good time somewhere else. But in the browser, you see like, oh no, this is a 200. This is 200 okay. Well, the problem is that we are like, why? There's a 404 status for this, or 410 gone if you don't like 404s. Please give us meaningful HTTP status codes so that we don't have to serve this, and then people are like, what is this? And then click back, and we're like, oh no. We're going to warn you if you're using one of the tools that I'm going to describe in a second. Also test in incognito windows. We had some people having issues with this. So you're using, let's say, so here I click on poppers, it loads perfectly fine, but then I click on refresh and then I get a 404. That's the problem that you described when you said you have to configure your server. Please do configure your server because this is really annoying. It gets even more confusing when you're using service workers because Google does not. we are not using service workers in the indexing or crawling or rendering phases. So if you have a service worker that somehow intercepts this and still serves the right page, that's great. But a user that comes to your page through the search results, has never installed a service worker, will get the 404 again. You can avoid that by testing in incognito windows where you do not have the service worker installed, as you're getting a fresh session every time. Also, you might want to have a look at structured data. There's a bunch of stuff. If you have some of the content of your content is one of these things, you can tell us explicitly that it's one of these things. We call this structured data, and it works like this. So let's say you have a recipe on your page. Your page describes the recipe in great detail and with images and stuff. You can add this little script tag somewhere in your page and tell us, this is actually a recipe for apple pie by grandma. And this is an image of this apple pie by grandma. And it's the best apple pie ever, because it's grandma's apple pie, and it's pretty freaking awesome. And we might pick this up and go, this is interesting. So there's a recipe on this page, and it has an image, and it has a bunch of stuff, and maybe it even has reviews, so you could embed reviews. So you get to tell us a little better what kind of stuff is in your page, and you might get into things like the rich results. So this is actually pretty cool. Also, we have a bunch of tools for you available. Some of them you might not know. So let's have a look. First things first, the mobile-friendly test. You just plug a URL in. Oh, we're in the middle of the GIF for some reason. You put your URL in here, click Run Test. It analyzes, and it gives you a bunch of stuff. This is good. You see a screenshot preview. You also see other things. So you can use this as a really quick way of seeing how your page is doing in search. Is it doing fine? Are we having a problem here? And it even gives you JavaScript error logs. So if there is something in your application that does not work with search for some reason, you will find out really quickly. And it goes as far as telling you if the markup that we are seeing is not quite what you expected. Maybe you are not having the hrefs in your links as you think you might have. So this is pretty cool, and you can check it out using this short link, mobile friendly. The other thing is the structured data test tool. I'm not having a screenshot here, but because basically it's just like a sandbox where you can put stuff in and see if your structured data makes sense and would work out. So it's a debugging tool. But it's also actually a great tool to figure out if your page that you later on present is actually working fine. You find that tool under this not so short link, or you can just actually Google for it. If you literally search for structured data testing tool, it might even allow you within the Google search to try it out, which is kind of fun. Last but not least, very important, Search Console was called Webmaster Tools beforehand. Has a bunch of new features, which is pretty fun. This is not necessary for debugging. This is for long-term monitoring of what's happening in your page. If you have SEOs in-house, or if you have some marketing people, they might use it already. You have to verify your page first, but then you get a bunch of stuff. So you get, for instance, the search queries that are people putting in. So it's not analytics. Analytics tells you what happens once people are on your page, whereas Search Console tells you what people are searching for that lands them on your page and how well you're doing in search results. So that's kind of fun. It also shows you warnings. So things like the soft 404s that I described earlier on. If you somehow deploy a version that suffers from them, you're going to get an email saying like, hey, the soft 404s went up a lot. So maybe you want to have a look at your code for figuring this one out. If you're using AMP, it gives you a bunch of stuff about this one. So how you are doing in terms of AMP, if there's any validation errors. Kind of useful, and it's g.co/search console where you can try this one out. So that's a fun one as well, and I have 1 minute left, which is perfect. So let me summarize this real quick. Pay attention to good URLs, make them stay around because good URLs do not change. Use redirects, use 404s responsibly. Use meaningful markup to make sure that what we are seeing and what browsers are seeing and what assistive technology, what blind users, what people with visibility issues, with motorical issues are actually seeing and using on the page, because markup still matters. Use the correct HTTP codes, because if you give us a 200, okay, but it's a 404 page, that might make your users really unhappy if they click on this in the search results. Then make sure to use structured data if you have content that makes sense to be exposed like that. And last but not least, we have tools for you to help you work. We're also working with the Lighthouse team to make Lighthouse a little more helpful with SEO stuff. It's already starting. There's great track there, so that's pretty cool. I would like to give credit to these lovely people and their dogs for being in the dog app that I put together. We didn't really see much of that, but hey. And I'd like to give some shout out to team members and members of other teams at Google that have helped me put together this presentation. So John Mueller, Maria Moeva, Tom Greenaway, and Igor Mina have been great helpers with this presentation. And I'd like to say thank you so much for having me. You're a great community. I'm loving to be here. Thank you. I'll be around if you have any questions. You can also, poke me on Twitter. If you want to hug, just let me know. I'm happily hugging you as well.
Like when I can detect that this bot, the Google bot came to the server and actually to give them the lightweight page,
right,
instead of the single page application.
Yes,
and blah, blah.
Yes, we call that dynamic rendering.
First of all, if it's not a problem from Google side, like I'm given the different content based on the user agent, and at the same time, what if I will just serve to Googlebot AMP pages, while users when come with the regular browsers, I will give the regular Angular application, whatever.
So there's basically two questions, if I understood that correctly. Let me rephrase to see if that's true. So first things first, isn't that a problem if I'm serving different content to the Googlebot than the regular user? And the other thing is, what happens if I just serve AMP pages to the users? Is that the two questions that? Yes. So this is a really good question. So the question then is like, what happens if I serve the Googlebot the AMP version and the regular user the regular version of my publication? That should be okay, I think, but I'm not 100% sure about this. It's a good question. I do not know the answer. I'll find out, and then we'll make sure that the documentation answers that question better, because I'm not 100% sure about this, and I'd rather not say something that's wrong. But generally, if you're serving us the same content in terms of content and not like markup, then that is dynamic rendering, and that's a policy change that we announced at I/O, and that is fine, generally speaking. So if you're building a version that is slightly different but has the same content for Googlebot, that is okay, and I guess AMP falls under that. So later, let's take this offline.
We got one more question. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm all right.
You said that don't remove pages, just redirect. So Google knows that the reference and all the indexing is the same page. My question is, how long do I need to keep the redirect? Because if the Google already indexed the new page, maybe I can already remove that and not say.
How long do you have to keep the original page redirecting to the new page for Google to do the thing? So that is, the answer is, as often in IT, it depends. But the thing is, basically the best way to figure that one out is, normally it should be relatively quickly. It might take a little longer because every page has what we call a crawl budget. So if your page is gigantic, we might not crawl all of it every day. So what you can do to make sure that you're not turning it off before people have moved to the new URL is you use Search Console for that. If you use Search Console, you'll see that people are landing on the new page rather than the old page, and then you should be fine turning it off. Excellent.
We've got one more here.
Oh.
That connects to his question. And why can't I force Google to index me again?
Oh, you can, kinda. As I say, like the internet is large, so if everyone just like constantly asks us to reindex everything, that's not going to help. But you can ask us to reindex your page. There's a variation of these things. In Search Console, you can submit a page for indexing, which tells us, aha, we have to have a look at this page again. You can use the indexing API. There's an API that you can query. For instance, if you're building a content management system, you could have something in the admin interface that allows people to recrawl the page eventually. It's not immediate, but it's definitely, you can queue it, and then it's going to happen at some point in the future. You can also just submit a sitemap XML and tell us, aha, the page, like there's this new URL that we didn't know before, and then we're going to recrawl it as well. So either we discover it through links, we use the sitemap XML that you provide us with, you can use the indexing API, or you can use Search Console to click on a magical button that re-indexes it eventually very soon. But it's not immediate. Okay.
Go one more here.
Why call you the dog Laika, not Tesla?
Sorry?
Why did you call a dog Laika, not Tesla?
Oh, that's a really good question. I just happen to actually know someone that has a dog that is called Laika, so I picked that one. But
I'm just joking, sorry.
Okay, no worries.
All right.
Also, Laika was cool, so.
Is there any way to to say to Google to remove immediately one of the pages, like the content does not exist and page does not exist anymore, because we get a lot of broken links when it's like cached somewhere. The people comes and the page is not exist, and we knew about it like 3 days ago. We updated the XML, the sitemap, and blah 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 and everything. But still, there is no way to say to Google, hey, since now, since this second, this page does not exist. Don't bring people over there.
I think there is a way to remove this because we have to do this due to DMCA and stuff like that. I just don't know it by heart. So that's a really good question. I would ask in the forum because I'm not sure if there is an API, but there might be an API or at least a form somewhere that allows this. I wouldn't shake my head without asking in the forum first, though. Okay. Thank you.